The year was 2847. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for almost 300 years. In all that time, they had never been treated as equals. The great alien empires looked at humans the way a giant looks at an ant. They were tolerated. They were sometimes useful. But they were never respected. Dr. Laura Bennett knew this better than most. She had spent her entire life working as a scientist, studying metals and materials that could be used to build better ships and stronger tools. She was good at her job. She was one of the best humans had ever produced. But to the aliens who controlled the galaxy, she was nothing. Laura worked on a small research station called the Horizon. It floated in the outer rim, far from the busy trade routes and rich planets that the alien empires cared about. The Galactic Council had given humans permission to build the station, but only because they did not think it mattered. Let the humans play with their toys, the aliens thought. They will never create anything important. The station was old and cramped. Laura shared her laboratory with 3 assistants and 1 maintenance robot that broke down every other week. Her funding was so small that she had to reuse equipment that should have been thrown away years ago. But Laura did not complain. She had learned long ago that complaining got humans nowhere. On the morning that changed everything, Laura was examining a piece of rock that had been pulled from a passing asteroid. Her assistant, Kevin Cross, had found it floating in the debris field near their station. At first glance, it looked like ordinary space rock. But when Laura put it under her scanner, she saw something strange. There was a crystalline structure inside the rock. It was small, barely visible to the naked eye. But its pattern was unlike anything Laura had ever seen. According to every law of physics she knew, this structure should not exist. "Kevin," she called out. "Come look at this." Kevin walked over to her workstation. He was a young man with tired eyes and dirty clothes. Like everyone on the station, he worked too hard and slept too little. But when he saw the scan results, his tiredness disappeared. "What is that?" he asked. "I do not know," Laura admitted. "But I intend to find out." For the next 6 months, Laura worked day and night. She studied the crystal. She ran tests. She tried to understand how it had formed and what made it special. Slowly, she began to piece together the answers. The crystal had properties that no known material possessed. It was incredibly strong. It could resist heat and pressure that would destroy anything else. And strangest of all, it seemed to absorb energy rather than reflect it. Laura wondered if she could create more of this material. She started experimenting with different combinations of elements, trying to recreate the crystal in her laboratory. Most of her attempts failed. The materials she created were strong, but not special. They were improvements over what humans already had, but nothing that would change the galaxy. Then, on a cold night, when everyone else on the station was asleep, Laura tried something new. She combined rare earth elements in a way that no one had ever tried before. She subjected them to extreme heat and pressure, using a process she had developed over 15 years of quiet work. She did not expect it to work. She had failed so many times before, but this time was different. When she opened the chamber and looked inside, she found a small disc of metal. It was silver in color and smooth to the touch. It was beautiful in a simple way, but Laura did not care about how it looked. She cared about what it could do. She placed the disc under her plasma cutter. This tool was powerful enough to slice through the hull of a starship. She turned it on and watched as the burning plasma struck the metal. Nothing happened. The disc was not scratched. It was not even warm. Laura's heart began to beat faster. She took the disc to the gravitational press, a machine designed to crush ore into refined metal. She set it to maximum pressure. The press groaned and strained. Warning lights flashed. The disc remained unchanged. Laura sat down heavily in her chair. Her hands were shaking. In her entire career, she had never seen anything like this. The metal she had created was stronger than anything that existed in the known galaxy. It could resist forces that would destroy warships and shatter planets. She called it adamantine. Kevin was the first person she told. He stared at the disk with wide eyes, unable to believe what he was seeing. Lavra showed him the test results. She showed him the plasma cutter that could not cut and the press that could not crush. "This is impossible," Kevin whispered. Lara smiled for the first time in months. "Impossible is what they have called humanity for 300 years. She knew she had to be careful. If the alien empires learned about adamantine, they would try to take it. They would claim it belonged to the galaxy, not to one small species from one small planet. They had done this before with other discoveries. Humans had learned to keep their secrets close. Lavra sent a coded message to Earth. She used an old encryption method that the aliens had long ago stopped trying to break. Within a week, she received a response. The United Terran government wanted to see her discovery for themselves. A month later, a small ship arrived at the Horizon Station. On board were scientists and military officers from Earth. They examined the adamantine sample. They reviewed Laura's research. They asked hundreds of questions. When they left, they took Lara with them. She was brought to a secret facility on Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter. The facility was hidden on the dark side, where no alien satellites could see it. Inside, hundreds of scientists worked on projects that the galaxy knew nothing about. Lara was given everything she had ever wanted. A proper laboratory, a full staff, unlimited funding. Her only task was to produce more adamantine and find new ways to use it. The work was hard. The process was slow. But month by month, the stockpile of adamantine grew. Engineers began designing new weapons and armor that used the miracle metal. Shipbuilders drew up plans for vessels that could not be destroyed. The alien empires continued to look down on humanity. They still laughed at human ships and mocked human technology. They had no idea that in the shadows of Europa, something was being built that would change everything. 3 years after Laura made her discovery, the first adamantine warship was completed. It was called the Dauntless. From the outside, it looked like any other human vessel. But its hull was lined with the strongest metal in the galaxy. The age of human weakness was over. The galaxy just did not know it yet. Admiral Nathan Cole had served in the Terran Navy for 40 years. He had given his whole life to protecting humanity among the stars. But in all those years, he had known nothing but frustration and shame. Human ships were weak. Everyone knew this. When alien vessels pushed them aside at jump gates, humans had to accept it. When alien traders cheated them, humans had to smile and pay. When alien raiders attacked their cargo ships, humans had to run or die. Nathan had watched his friends die in these encounters. He had seen good ships destroyed by enemies they could not fight. He had written letters to the families of fallen crew members, telling them that their loved ones had died with honor. But deep inside, he felt only anger. Humanity deserved better. They just did not have the power to demand it. All of that changed when Nathan received orders to take command of the Dauntless. The ship was waiting for him at the secret Europa facility. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary frigate. It was not large or impressive. But when Nathan stepped aboard and learned what it was made of, his heart began to race. 3 centimeters of adamantine plating covered the entire hull. The weapon systems had been rebuilt around adamantine components. Even the reactor shielding used the miracle metal. Dr. Lavra Bennett herself gave him a tour of the ship, explaining what it could do. This vessel cannot be destroyed by any weapon currently known to exist, Lavra told him. We have tested it against everything we have. Plasma, kinetic rounds, missiles, energy beams. Nothing works. Nathan ran his hand along the smooth silver wall. And the weapons? Adamantine-tipped projectiles, accelerated to extreme speeds. In our tests, they passed through shield technology as if it was not there. Nathan felt something he had not felt in decades. Hope. His crew was carefully selected. Every man and woman aboard the Dauntless knew the importance of their mission. They were not just testing a new ship. They were testing the future of their entire species. Lieutenant Megan Torres ran the sensor station. She was young but talented, with sharp eyes and quick hands. Commander Ryan Price served as the executive officer. He was Nathan's oldest friend, a man he trusted with his life. Their orders were simple. Take the Dauntless into contested space. Find trouble. And see what happens. They did not have to wait long. The Dauntless was passing through a trade route near the border of Keth space when the sensors picked up contacts. Megan studied her screen and frowned. 4 vessels approaching, Admiral. Keth raiders. They are moving to intercept. Nathan nodded slowly. The Keth were insectoid aliens with a reputation for cruelty. Their raiders preyed on human shipping because they knew humans could not fight back. The Galactic Council always looked the other way. Such incidents were labeled unfortunate misunderstandings, and nothing was ever done. Open a channel, Nathan ordered. The main screen flickered to life. A Keth captain appeared, his insect face filling the display. His mandibles clicked together as he spoke. Human vessel, you will power down your engines and prepare for inspection. We will take your cargo. If you resist, we will destroy you. You have 1 minute to comply. Nathan had heard these words before. Every human captain had. The smart thing to do was to surrender and hope the Keth would leave the crew alive. Fighting was suicide, but today was different. Keth vessel, Nathan said calmly. This is Admiral Nathan Cole of the Terran Navy. I'm going to give you 1 chance to withdraw. Take it. The Keth captain froze. His compound eyes widened in what might have been surprise. Then his mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of fury. You dare threaten the Keth Dominion? You humans are even more foolish than we believed. Your entire species will suffer for this insult. The channel closed. Moments later, all 4 Keth raiders opened fire. Plasma bolts streaked through space and slammed into the Dauntless. Kinetic rounds followed, hammering the hull with tremendous force. The attack would have torn any normal human ship to pieces in seconds. On the bridge, the crew braced for impact. Megan gripped her console. Ryan grabbed the railing beside his chair. Everyone held their breath. Nothing happened. The ship did not shake. No alarms sounded. The lights did not even flicker. Megan stared at her console in disbelief. Hull integrity at 100%. No damage detected. No damage at all. The Keth continued their assault. They fired everything they had. Missiles streaked across the void and exploded against the adamantine hull. More plasma. More kinetic rounds. The barrage went on for a full minute. The Dauntless sat in space, untouched, like a rock in a stream. Nathan watched the show of alien firepower with cold satisfaction. 40 years of humiliation. 40 years of running. 40 years of watching his people suffer. It was all ending right now. Return fire, he ordered. The Dauntless responded with a single volley. 4 adamantine projectiles launched from the ship's main cannons, 1 for each raider. They moved so fast that they were almost invisible. They hit the Keth ships before the aliens could even react. The projectiles passed through the Keth shields as if they did not exist. They passed through the armored hulls. They passed through the reactors and out the other side. 4 explosions lit up the darkness of space. 4 Keth raiders, gone in an instant. The bridge was silent. The crew stared at their screens, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. An entire enemy squadron, destroyed in under 10 seconds. Ryan turned to Nathan with an expression caught between shock and joy. "Sir, what do we do now?" Nathan looked at the expanding debris fields. Somewhere in that wreckage were the aliens who had terrorized human space for generations. They had been so confident in their power. They had been so sure that humans would always be victims. They had been wrong. "Now, Commander, we change the galaxy." The Dauntless returned to Earth with records of the battle. The Dauntless returned the battle. The footage was studied by military leaders and government officials. Everyone who watched it came to the same conclusion. Humanity was no longer weak. Humanity was now the most powerful force in the known galaxy. Production of adamantine increased. More ships were built. More weapons were forged. Crews were trained in secret, preparing for the day when humanity would step out of the shadows. That day was coming soon. The Keth would tell their masters what had happened. The great empires would investigate. They would learn about the humans and their impossible metal dot, and then they would come. But for the first time in 300 years, humanity was ready. High Magistrate Zoran had ruled the Velnorix Empire for 600 years. His species had traveled between stars when humans were still living in caves. The Velnorix controlled 1,000 star systems. They had conquered 100 species. They were the greatest power the galaxy had ever known. Zoran sat on his throne in the great council chamber, surrounded by the highest leaders of his empire. He was ancient by any standard, his gray skin wrinkled and his eyes dim. But his mind was still sharp, and his will was still strong. Today, that will was being tested. "Show me again," he commanded. The holographic display in the center of the chamber flickered to life. It showed a battle in space, recorded by a Velnorix patrol ship. In the recording, a human cruiser was fighting a Velnorix dreadnought. The dreadnought was one of the most powerful ships in the Imperial fleet. It was massive, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. It had never lost a battle in 200 years of service. In the recording, the dreadnought fired everything it had at the human cruiser. The weapons that could destroy cities struck the small vessel again and again. The human ship should have been vaporized instantly. Instead, it kept coming. The weapons did nothing. The human ship simply absorbed the punishment and continued its advance. Then the human vessel fired once. The dreadnought, the pride of the Velnorix fleet, broke apart like a child's toy. The recording ended in static. Zoran stared at the empty display for a long moment. Around him, his advisors waited in nervous silence. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked. Fleet Marshal Kethera stepped forward. She was the highest military commander in the Empire, responsible for all of its warships and soldiers. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed fear. 3 sector fleets, High Magistrate. 47 capital ships. Hundreds of smaller vessels. All destroyed by human forces. And how many human ships were destroyed? Kethera hesitated. "None that we have confirmed, High Magistrate." A murmur ran through the council chamber. None. The humans had fought 3 major engagements against Velnorix forces and had lost nothing. "What manner of weapon is this?" Zoran demanded. "What technology could make their ships invincible?" "Our intelligence suggests the humans have developed a new type of metal," Kethera explained. "We do not know how they created it or what it is made of. Our scientists say it should not be possible." Zoran rose from his throne. His ancient robes flowed around him as he walked to the center of the chamber, closer to where the hologram had been displayed. "Should not be possible," he repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "And yet their ships patrol trade routes they once fled from. And yet our fleets burn while theirs remain untouched. And yet we, the masters of 1,000 worlds, are being humiliated by creatures we considered primitives." He turned to face his council. "This ends now. Marshal Kethera, summon the Armada. Every ship, every weapon, Every soldier the Empire can muster. We will go to human space ourselves. We will crush them. And if they will not share the secret of their metal, we will take it from their ashes." The order went out across the Empire. Ships were recalled from distant sectors. Reserve fleets were activated. Training exercises were cancelled. Every vessel capable of fighting was called to join the Armada. It took 3 months to assemble. When it was complete, it was the largest military force the galaxy had seen in 1,000 years. 200,000 warships. 50 million soldiers. A fleet so vast that it darkened the stars when it moved together. Word of the Armada spread across the galaxy. Other species watched in fear and fascination. The Velnorics had conquered many peoples with far smaller forces. Now they were sending everything they had against one small species from one small planet. On Earth, the news arrived with grim certainty. Scout ships reported the Armada's movements. Diplomats confirmed that no negotiations would be offered. The Velnorics intended to wipe humanity from existence. President Katie Morrison addressed the people of Earth and all human colonies. She stood on the steps of the United Terran capital, her face calm and her voice steady. "For 300 years," she said, "we have been told that we do not belong among the stars. We have been exploited. We have been humiliated. We have been dismissed and ignored. The great empires called us primitive. They called us weak. They said we would never be more than a footnote in galactic history." She paused and looked directly into the camera. They were wrong. Across human space, people stopped to listen. Workers put down their tools. Soldiers stood at attention. Children watched with wide eyes as their president spoke. "The Velnorics are coming. They bring the largest fleet ever assembled. They believe their numbers will overwhelm us. They believe we will break and scatter before their might." Her voice grew stronger. "But we have something they do not understand. We have courage. We have determination. We have the will to fight for our right to exist. And we have adamantine." She raised her fist. "Let them come. Let them throw their entire armada against us. And let them learn what humanity is truly made of." The speech was broadcast to every human world. It was watched by billions. And when it ended, there was no fear. There was only resolve. In shipyards across human space, the adamantine fleet prepared for war. 800 vessels, each one lined with the miracle metal. They were outnumbered 200 to 1. By any logical calculation, they should have no chance. But Admiral Nathan Cole looked at his fleet and felt no doubt. He had seen what adamantine could do. He had watched alien weapons bounce harmlessly off his hull. He had seen enemy ships shatter from a single shot. "Are we ready?" Commander Ryan Price asked him. Nathan watched the last supply shuttle dock with the Dauntless. Across the fleet, crews made final preparations. Weapons were checked. Systems were tested. Prayers were said. "We are ready," Nathan said. "Let them come." In the distance, beyond the edge of human space, the Velnorics Armada began its final approach. 200,000 ships, carrying the hopes of an ancient empire. They expected victory. They expected to teach humanity a lesson that would echo through history. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Pale Reach was a region of empty space at the edge of human territory. It had no planets, no resources, and no strategic value. It was simply a place where the stars grew thin and the darkness stretched forever. It was here that humanity chose to make its stand. Admiral Nathan Cole positioned his fleet in a defensive formation. 800 ships, arranged in concentric circles, their weapons pointed outward. Behind them lay the human colonies. Behind them lay Earth. Behind them lay everything humanity had ever built. There would be no retreat. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Nathan watched his crew prepare for battle. Lieutenant Megan Torres ran continuous sensor sweeps, tracking the approaching enemy. Commander Ryan Price coordinated with the other ships in the fleet, making sure everyone was in position. "Contact," Megan announced. "The Armada is emerging from hyperspace." The main display lit up with thousands of points of light. Then tens of thousands. Then more than the screen could properly show. 200,000 Velnorix warships filled the void. Their formation stretched across the entire field of view, so vast that individual ships were barely visible. It was like watching a wall of steel close in from every direction. Nathan had seen many things in his 40 years of service. He had never seen anything like this. "The High Magistrate is hailing us," Megan reported. "Put him through." The display shifted to show High Magistrate Zorn on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The ancient alien looked at Nathan with contempt in his tired eyes. "Human Commander," Zorn said, "I offer you one chance to surrender. Hand over the secret of your metal. Disarm your fleet. Accept Velnorix rule over your species. Do this, and some of your people may be allowed to live." Nathan considered the offer for exactly 1 second. "Zorn, I have a counteroffer. Turn your fleet around. Go home, and never threaten humanity again." Zorn's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "You have 800 ships. I have 200,000. What makes you think you can threaten me?" Nathan smiled. "Watch and learn." The channel closed. For a moment, nothing happened. The two fleets faced each other across the emptiness of space. 200,000 ships against 800. By every calculation, the outcome should have been obvious. Then the Velnorix opened fire. The barrage was unlike anything in recorded history. Tens of thousands of weapons platforms fired simultaneously. Plasma beams, kinetic projectiles, guided missiles, energy lances. A storm of destruction that should have wiped the human fleet from existence in seconds. The attacks struck the adamantine hulls and stopped. Plasma splashed harmlessly against the silver metal. Kinetic rounds bounced away into the void. Missiles exploded on the surface without leaving a mark. The energy lances, powerful enough to slice moons in half, did nothing at all. 800 human ships sat in the middle of the greatest attack ever launched. Completely untouched. On the Eternal Dominion, Fleet Marshal Kethera stared at her tactical display in disbelief. "High Magistrate, our weapons are having no effect. Every hit is being absorbed by their home material." Zorn leaned forward in his throne. "Increase firepower. Target all weapons on the lead vessel." The order was given. 20,000 ships concentrated their fire on the Dauntless alone. The amount of energy striking the vessel would have been enough to destroy a small planet. The Dauntless did not even shake. "Hull integrity remains at 100%, Megan reported. "No damage detected." Nathan nodded slowly. He had known this would happen. He had seen it before with the Keth Raiders. But some part of him had still wondered if the Velnorix might have something stronger. They did not. "All ships," Nathan broadcast to the fleet, "begin your advance. Fire at will." The human fleet moved forward. What followed would be remembered as the most one-sided battle in galactic history. The adamantine ships pushed into the Velnorix formation like wolves among sheep. Their projectiles, tipped with the same miracle metal that protected their hulls, passed through Velnorix shields as if they were made of paper. One shot, one kill. That was all it took. Velnorix dreadnoughts, each one the pride of some ancient fleet, exploded from single impacts. Cruisers were torn apart. Destroyers vanished in flashes of light. The Armada, which had expected to sweep humanity aside, was being systematically destroyed. 10,000 ships fell in the first hour. Then 20,000. Then 50,000. On the Eternal Dominion, Zorn watched his life's work crumble around him. The tactical display was a sea of red, showing destroyed vessels everywhere he looked. His commanders were screaming for orders. His crew was beginning to panic. How is this possible? He whispered. How can 800 ships defeat 200,000? He had no answer. No one did. The human fleet continued its advance. They moved in perfect formation, each ship covering the others. Their weapons never stopped firing. Velnorix's vessels exploded by the thousands. Some of the alien commanders tried to flee. They turned their ships and ran for the hyperspace points. But the human vessels were faster. Adamantine-tipped missiles caught them before they could escape. Others tried to ram the human ships directly. Their vessels struck the adamantine hulls and shattered like glass against stone. Nothing worked. Nothing even slowed the humans down. After 6 hours of battle, Fleet Marshal Cathera approached Zorn's throne. Her uniform was torn. Her face was covered in blood from a wound on her forehead. Her voice was hollow with defeat. High Magistrate, we have lost 70% of the Armada. The humans have sustained no confirmed casualties. Not one ship. If we do not withdraw now, we will be completely destroyed. Zorn looked at the tactical display one last time. His great fleet, the might of a 1,000-year empire, was burning. The humans had done this with 800 vessels. For the first time in 6 centuries, Zorn knew true fear. Signal the retreat, he ordered. All ships withdraw immediately. What remained of the Velnorix armada fled the Pale Reach. They scattered in every direction, desperate to escape the impossible human weapons. Many did not make it. The humans pursued them to the edge of their territory, destroying any ship that fell behind. Of the 200,000 vessels that had entered the Pale Reach, fewer than 30,000 escaped. When the last Velnorix ship had fled or been destroyed, Admiral Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the Dauntless and looked at the aftermath. Debris fields stretched across millions of kilometers. The remains of the greatest armada ever assembled drifted in the darkness. Sir, Megan said quietly, fleet status report. All 800 vessels present and accounted for. No casualties. No damage. Ryan Price walked to stand beside Nathan. His face was pale with the enormity of what had happened. We did it, Ryan said. We actually did it. Nathan nodded slowly. 300 years of humiliation. 300 years of being called primitive and weak. 300 years of watching humanity suffer at the hands of those who called themselves their betters. It was over. Signal the fleet, Nathan ordered. The Battle of the Pale Reach is concluded. Humanity is victorious. Across human space, the news spread like wildfire. The impossible had happened. The Velnorix Empire, masters of the galaxy, had been broken in a single day by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Everything had changed. 3 months after the Battle of the Pale Reach, the galaxy came to Earth. Representatives from every major power gathered in the United Terran capital. The Velnorix sent diplomats instead of warships. The Keth Dominion sent ambassadors instead of raiders. Species that had never spoken to humans before now asked politely for an audience. They came because they had no choice. The old order was dead. The great empires that had ruled for thousands of years had been humbled by a species they once called primitive. Now, they needed to understand what humanity wanted. Ambassador Daniel Hayes led the human delegation. He was a quiet man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had spent his career trying to negotiate with aliens who saw humans as lesser beings. For the first time, he was negotiating from a position of strength. The great hall was filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some floated in special chambers filled with their native atmosphere. Others wore translation devices that converted human speech into their own languages. All of them watched Daniel with a mixture of fear and respect. High Magistrate Zorn sat in a special section reserved for the Velnorix delegation. He was diminished, his ancient body weaker than it had been before the war. The defeat at the Pale Reach had broken something inside him. But he still held power, and he still represented an empire of 1,000 worlds. Daniel stood at the central podium and looked out at the assembled delegates. "We did not seek this war," he began. "We did not desire conquest or revenge. We simply wanted what every species wants: the right to exist in peace and dignity, the right to travel among the stars without being pushed aside, the right to be treated as equals." He paused, letting his words sink in. For 300 years, these rights were denied to us. We were exploited. We were humiliated. We were forced to bow before those who called themselves our masters. When we asked for justice, we were laughed at. When we demanded fairness, we were ignored. Zoran shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Around the hall, other alien delegates avoided looking at each other. "The war is over," Daniel continued. "The Volnorix Armada has been destroyed. Your military power has been broken. You have nothing left with which to threaten us." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some of the delegates looked afraid. Others looked angry. All of them wondered what humanity would demand. Daniel raised his hand for silence. "You expect us to take revenge. You expect us to do to you what you did to us. To exploit your people. To take your resources. To make you bow before human power." He shook his head slowly. "We will not do this. We are not you." The hall fell completely silent. The aliens stared at Daniel with confusion in their eyes. "We will ask you for the secret of adamantine," Daniel said. "Let me save you the trouble. Dr. Lavra Bennett, the scientist who discovered the metal, will explain." Lavra walked to the podium. She looked uncomfortable, surrounded by so many aliens, but her voice was steady. "Adamantine requires conditions that exist only in human space," she explained. "The process needs specific mineral compositions that come from our asteroid belt. It requires certain gravitational constants found only near our sun. It depends on solar radiation patterns that occur nowhere else in the known galaxy. We have tested this extensively. The metal cannot be made beyond our borders." A wave of reaction swept through the hall. Some aliens argued with each other. Others consulted their scientific advisors. The implications were clear. Daniel stepped forward again. "In other words, you cannot take what we have. You cannot recreate it. You cannot steal it or copy it. The only way to access adamantine is to trade with humanity. Fairly, honestly, as equals." He looked directly at Zoran. "Those are our terms. Take them or leave them." The negotiations that followed lasted for 2 weeks. Every detail was discussed and argued over. But in the end, the aliens had no choice. They could not fight humanity. They could not match human technology. They could only agree to human demands. The Treaty of Soul was signed on a bright morning in spring. It established new trade agreements that respected human sovereignty. It provided diplomatic recognition of Earth as a major galactic power. It required reparations for 3 centuries of exploitation. Most importantly, it declared that humanity would never again be treated as lesser beings. When the last signature was placed on the document, Daniel Hayes allowed himself a small smile. He had spent his whole life dreaming of this moment. Now it was real. 6 months after the treaty was signed, Admiral Nathan Cole stood on a balcony overlooking the Terran Naval Academy. Below him, the newest class of cadets marched across the parade ground. They were young men and women who would never know what it felt like to be humiliated by alien powers. Dr. Lara Bennett stood beside him. She had accepted a position as Director of Advanced Materials Research, though she still preferred the quiet of her laboratory. "They are calling you the savior of humanity," Lara said. "You know that, right?" Nathan shook his head. "I just pointed the weapons. You built them, and now what? We have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. We could do to them what they did to us. We could build an empire greater than anything the Volnorics ever created. Nathan watched a young cadet stumble during the march. She caught herself quickly and continued forward with renewed determination. She reminded him of himself 40 years ago. The Volnorics ruled through fear for 1,000 years, he said. Look where it got them. Their empire is crumbling. Their people are divided. Other species hate them and wait for the chance to break free. He turned to Laura. We will do something different. We will build something better. Not an empire built on fear, but a community built on trust. Not subjects who obey because they must, but partners who cooperate because they choose to. Laura raised an eyebrow. You think that is possible? After everything that has happened? Nathan smiled. 3 years ago, you created an impossible metal in a forgotten laboratory at the edge of nowhere. You did it with no funding, no support, and no recognition. You proved that possibility is what humanity does best. He looked out across the academy where the future of humanity trained and learned. We have been given a gift. Not just adamantine, but a chance to reshape the galaxy. We can make it a better place. A place where species help each other instead of exploit each other. Where the strong protect the weak instead of preying on them. Laura considered his words for a long moment. That sounds like a lot of work. It will be. It will take generations. We may not live to see it finished, but it is worth doing. Nathan nodded. It is the only thing worth doing. Across the galaxy, the old powers watched and waited. They feared what humanity would do with its newfound strength. They expected conquest. They expected vengeance. They expected humanity to become the new tyrants of the stars. Instead, humanity offered something none of them had expected: an open hand. Help for those who needed it. Trade for those who wanted it. Friendship for those who sought it. The adamantine fleet still patrolled the space lanes, but it protected rather than threatened. Human ships still carried the most powerful weapons in existence, but they used them to defend, not to attack. Slowly, one species at a time, the galaxy began to change. Old enemies became new friends. Ancient hatreds faded. The walls that had divided civilizations for thousands of years began to crumble. It was not perfect. It was not easy. There were setbacks and failures and moments of doubt. But humanity kept trying. They kept reaching out. They kept believing that the galaxy could be better. And slowly, the galaxy began to reach back. 1,000 years later, historians would look back at this moment as the beginning of a new age. The age of humanity, some called it. The age of hope, said others. And it started with one scientist in a forgotten laboratory, creating a metal that should not exist. It had continued with one admiral who believed in something better. It had grown through the courage of millions who chose hope over fear. Humanity had forged a metal so powerful that it shattered galactic armies. But their greatest creation was not adamantine. It was the future they built with their open hands and hopeful hearts. And that future was only just beginning.